screen. I just want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us, especially our participants and our speakers today. It's great to have people from around the world joining us. I think Joanna might be able to provide us with a quick rundown of how many countries are on board, maybe at the end of the webinar. I'd like to just start us off by talking a little bit about what the International Solar Energy Society is and who we are. Many of you already know us. We, as members or as colleagues and partners, we represent and advocate for 100% renewable energy used efficiently and wisely for all. As I said before, we are an international membership organization, and we provide our members with up-to-date critical information and unique networking opportunities. For example, our Solar World Congress, which is coming up here in November in Daegu, Korea. And we support our work. You can support our work and the global energy transformation by joining ISES. And we offered various services, I said before, with information services and networking opportunities. For example, these webinars. We provide our members through the members area access to the presentations and the recordings of all the ISES webinars. We've been holding them since 2012. They are publicly available on our public website for 24 hours after this live event, and then after that they are available to our ISES members. To become a member, you can just join online by visiting join.ises.org and proceed from there. Members receive the access to the webinar recordings, the question and answers from the session. You can also receive a certificate of participation, the panelist presentations, access to the member directory, membership information that's available to our members, for example, our magazines, as well as unique opportunities, for example, our conference like I mentioned before. So if you're interested in joining, or if you haven't joined yet, please contact us or visit our website. So as Joanna mentioned before, this webinar is being organized together with the 100% Renewable Energy campaign, of which ISES is a founding member. It's the first global initiative that advocates for 100% renewable energy, and it builds on initiatives that are already taking place at the national, regional, and local levels, and steers and aims to steer the global discourse on renewable energy towards 100% as the new normal. I think there might be a little bit of a lag in my slide, but I hope you should see it now. I apologize for that. You should be able to see my next slide shortly. There we go. The goal of the campaign is to initiate dialogue about 100% renewable energy, build capacity, and educate policymakers about the opportunities, case studies, and stories that are happening all over the world. To learn more, visit the website go100re.net. So this webinar will give you the opportunity to ask questions to our panelists. If you would like to ask a question, just type it in the question pane on your screen. We will try to answer as many questions as we can. Unfortunately, we may not get to all of them, which is why we'll post the questions to the panelists after the webinar and have them posted on the members area. So again, we apologize if we don't get to your question, but please feel free to ask questions anytime during the session. We look forward to your questions and to having an engaging dialogue with you, our audience. We also welcome your feedback. You can write to us at publicrelations.ises.org with any comments or questions about this or other events. And after the webinar, a survey will be launched, and you can leave us. You can provide your input that way, and I'll remind everyone about this again before we leave. So now we'd like to start us off. You can see these are our panelists. By introducing Gordian Raacke. Gordian is the Executive Director of the Renewable Energy Long Island. It's a nonprofit organization working towards 100% renewable energy future. He is regarded as a trusted expert by the public, media, and elected officials, and serves on a number of government and energy committees, including the Town of East Hampton's Energy Sustainability Committee, where he introduced the concept of 100% renewable energy. He actually grew up in Germany and now lives in a super insulated solar-powered home in East Hampton, New York. So Gordian, we welcome you and thank you for joining us, especially at this very early hour there in New York.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for having me on the webinar here. I will tell you a little bit about what we did here in East Hampton, New York, to begin the journey to 100% renewable energy. And I'll jump right in. I assume you can see my screen. And for those of you who are not familiar with the lay of the land over here in the U.S., put up a quick map here that shows you where we are, just about over here. The organization I head up is called Renewable Energy Long Island. That is a not-for-profit organization working on making the transition happen from fossil fuels to 100% renewables. East Hampton is a beautiful place to live, and I'm lucky to live in this town. We have beautiful beaches. It's a beautiful community. We're surrounded by water on 3 sides. And contrary to common perception, we are not just a playground of the rich and famous. We have a lot of working people and middle-class people here. In 2012, in October, we were hit by Hurricane Sandy, or what we can now call Superstorm Sandy. There was extensive damage on Long Island and out here in East Hampton. We sort of got lucky, relatively speaking, because the damage up island or west of here was much greater than we saw here. It was a great shock, and we knew all along that sea level and storm surges would be getting worse and worse with climate change, but we didn't quite realize how bad it could be, and that it was already happening so fast. Here's just a quick look. Of course, as we all know, carbon dioxide level concentrations in the atmosphere have increased dramatically. You see the last 800,000 years here and where we are today. It is clear, I think, to everyone that we need to return to safe or more normal levels of carbon dioxide concentrations. And in order to do that, we are told by the scientific community that we need to reduce emissions at least 80% by mid-century. Our state here in New York State has a number of goals aimed at that. Our energy plan that has a 2030 time horizon calls for reducing greenhouse gas emissions from various sectors 40% by 2030. And also, by the way, has other goals such as 50% renewable electricity generation by that year, 2030. We also have an executive order that calls for that 80% reductions, 80% economy-wide by 2050, which of course we know is a big lift, is a huge job. That brings us to the town of East Hampton. Here's our resolution that the town passed just last year in 2014, and it calls for meeting 100% of community-wide electricity consumption by the year, with renewable energy sources by the year 2020. And then it goes further. It actually calls for, sets a goal to meet the equivalent of 100% of our economy-wide, meaning all sectors, transportation, heating, electricity, from renewables by 2030. We didn't get there just overnight. It took a number of steps to get to that point of passing that resolution. In 2012, our organization, Renewable Energy Long Island, released this study compiled by Synapse Energy Economic. In 2009, our community here in East Hampton joined a New York State initiative called Climate Smart Communities, You see a map here of communities that have joined that initiative in the state. And we just issued, actually we just prepared a draft climate action plan, which is part of that initiative. We'll be adopting that soon. We also did a carbon, or had a carbon emissions baseline inventory done in 2005 with the help of ICLEI. And again in 2010, this was done by the New York Institute of Technology. You can see the data link down here. And this tells us clearly that our electricity sector here in East Hampton is more than half of our carbon emission. So it's clear that if we want to reduce emissions 80% by 2050 or before, we are well advised to work on the electricity sector first, because if we do that, we can get half of the problem solved already. So that's what we're focusing right now. As you saw in the resolution earlier, we of course then will move on to the other sectors and will reduce emissions there and also work on the waste management sector. Now, as I said, we have not done this overnight. It took a number of steps to get there, starting with joining climate smart communities in 2009, getting our carbon footprint and our study, our island-wide study out. The town formed an energy sustainability committee on which I serve, which I head up now. The town also passed a clean energy vision, sort of a broad outline of our vision of our energy future in 2013. We issued a number of RFPs to select proposals for solar and offshore wind, and then in 2014 we actually adopted the resolution. When we issued this first RFP, we got a number of proposals from solar companies and also an offshore wind proposal, and when we added up the annual expected output, energy output from these, we realized very quickly that we would be meeting almost 90% of our annual electricity consumption with those resources if they were all built. Now, not all of them will be built, but it was an important realization in that it told us that we can do this. This is entirely feasible, at least technically feasible, and it gave the town board and our elected officials and town officials here the confidence that our goal would not be just a dream, but could indeed be turned into reality. Here's the offshore wind project I mentioned already. This is a company called Deepwater Wind, which is planning to put a wind farm about 30 miles east of Montauk. This is Montauk here. This is the town of East Hampton. And we are very excited about that. And of course, we think that this kind of a resource would go a long way meeting our challenge here to generate our electricity from renewables. Here's a rendering of a project, a deepwater wind project in our neighboring region here in Block Island that is actually being built right now. These turbines, the foundations have been put in already now. And I should mention that we have broad public support for renewable energy, of course, but specifically also for this offshore wind farm. Here's a News 12, a media poll that showed that over 80% of Long Islanders support that. When it comes to solar, of course, we are eager to not only do rooftop solar, but larger scale solar projects. And here you see that 3 projects are in the works, being permitted right now. They would be up to 4 megawatt in size, and they would be at our town landfill and a few other sites here in town. Rooftop solar systems are, of course, another important component, but we only had about 400, but the town only has 20,000 year-round residents. We had 400 at the end of last year. We hope to grow that significantly. And this slide shows you just that in 2014, here's how much renewable energy we had, and here's where we have to go. So we have a big job and a steep climb ahead of us. That starts with public outreach. but it also starts with leading by example. So we have municipal buildings and other public buildings that have put solar panels on their roofs. We installed a couple of charging stations that you can see here, and this is a monitoring software. We've seen a big growth in the use of these charging stations, and that is very encouraging. Renewable energy alone, of course, will not be the only thing we'll do. We are looking at implementing a much more strict building code that would require new buildings and major renovations to meet very strict energy efficiency standards. We are most likely going to use the home energy rating system for that. So again, as I said earlier, we did not get there overnight. It took a number of steps. You see some of them mentioned here. We have also gotten New York State grants. One of them, a grant for putting together our planning document for making this transition. Also very excited about having the town having received a grant for a microgrid, for a study to see if a microgrid could work here. We are adopting our climate action plan now. We are issuing another request for proposals, another solicitation for more solar and energy storage facilities. And as I mentioned, we are looking at improving our building code. Media outreach is extremely important, and we've gotten very good response and coverage in the media. Public outreach, public education is another very important part of our work. You see some of that here. And joining a regional and national and international movement is another important component. Here you see some of folks from East Hampton at the Climate March in New York City last year, which was a great event. It is clear that we are standing at a crossroads. We have to choose our energy future, and we have to determine our own energy future. For us, the choice is pretty clear. We know that we cannot and will not continue with business as usual. We know that we have to make the right choice and move towards clean and renewable and sustainable energy choices. And we know that we have to take control. And here are a few more steps to getting this right. This is not just about renewable energy, we believe. This is about community empowerment, and we are building a strong base and striving to empower our community here to take ownership of our energy future. And speaking of ownership, we also are, of course, very much looking at who will own the renewable energy facilities that we are building here or having built here. So we're looking at different ownership models. We see this not only as a tool to bring renewable energy to this beautiful town, but we see this as an economic development tool. We see this as a job creation tool. We want to keep more money, more of our energy dollars, much more of them in our local economy, where they can go around and around and create jobs and wealth. We also know we have to, on an ongoing basis, keep track of our data, keep track of what we're doing, and analyze that data. One thing, for example, we are starting to do now is to do a rooftop solar analysis to determine how much capacity, how much energy we could be generating from solar rooftop panels on homes and businesses, and also on parking lots and other surfaces like that. That we call that technical and achievable potential studies. We also need to do that, and will do that, regarding the energy efficiency improvement potential of our residential and commercial and municipal buildings. We're looking at a concept called community choice aggregation, which essentially means that a municipality, a town, acts as an aggregator and procures or purchases renewable energy and sells it to its residents on an opt-out basis. And of course that means that we procure the power and select power, renewable energy, but it doesn't mean that we distribute and transmit the power. That would still be a function that the utility would fulfill, the conventional utility company. And lastly, we look at this as a holistic undertaking. We think it is very important to engage people from all sorts of different fields, from different communities, from different demographics. We look at this as a way to improve the resilience of our community, to improve the economic development here, as I said already, and we improve the public health in our community. So we see this as something that goes much further and needs much further involvement than just people that deal or are concerned with energy issues. So to sum up, we know we have all the tools in our toolbox that we need to make this transformation. And we also know we have a huge job to do, but we are all very excited about making this happen. And we know we have to make it happen, and we will make it happen. And with that, I thank you for your attention and turn it back to you.
Great, thank you, Gordian. That was a very interesting and insightful presentation into the way to what's going on actually in your community and how you're approaching it. I have one question that came in from a participant in Korea. She was asking if there were any issues raised over the environmental impact by the offshore wind power turbine. If that was an issue or if there are any issues raised.
That is a very, very good question. And the answer is that, of course, it is very important to look at environmental impacts and impacts on marine life when it comes to siting offshore wind farms as well as onshore wind farms. And of course, these studies will be done. Some of them are already underway. We cannot build an offshore wind farm if it had significant environmental impacts. We hope, of course, that will be that will not be a problem, and we cannot move forward if that would become a problem.
Okay, great, thanks. Was there any opposition? I'll just take one more now, and then we'll
yeah, there is not really any widespread opposition to this. We have heard some concerns from the commercial fishery industries, but the public at large generally is supportive, as you've seen in this poll, and we have a number of other polls, because people, first of all, know that we need clean energy, and they know that since our land areas are constrained, this is an important part of moving to large-scale clean energy. But also I should mention the wind farm being 30 miles offshore means that you practically cannot see it from anywhere in town. You'd have to get on a boat and go out there to see it. So there's not much of a visual impact, and therefore little concern about that.
Okay, well great, there's a lot more questions coming in for you now. We'll try to get those to you and see how many we can address at the end, but now we'll move on to Anna's presentation. So thank you again, Gordon. Like I said, there's a lot of questions coming in now. So let's move on to Anna's presentation. Anna Marques is an environmental engineer with a broad background which includes energy, water, and waste. She joined ICLEI's World Secretariat in Bonn in 2012 as a senior officer for the Low Carbon City Agenda, where her work has been focusing on tackling non-technical barriers to the implementation of low-emission development solutions by local governments. She worked at the Energy Agency in Portugal, as well as worked on other implementing projects under the European Union's 2020 Climate Energy Package. So welcome, Anna. We're glad to have you on board, and I hand over to you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good morning or good afternoon, good evening to all of the participants. Thank you to ISES as well for hosting this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here. As you indicated, my name is Marques. I am Senior Officer for Low Carbon Cities at the ICLEI World Secretariat in Bonn, in Germany. And here's an overview of the contents that I would like to share with you today. I would like to address some of the motivations that are driving local governments to set ambitious renewable energy targets, as well as give you some concrete examples of the different steps that can be part of this pathway to reach such an ambitious target. I would like to tell you also a little bit about the 100% renewable energies cities and regions network. And finally, I would like to invite the organizations that are participating in the event to take part in a dialogue that ICLEI wishes to establish with the renewable energy industries to help shape the guidance that we are providing to local governments in this regard. So very quickly, just to give you a brief introduction to what ICLEI is, to those of you who are not familiar, ICLEI is an association of local governments. It was created in 1990, and it is indeed a network that enables peer learning and exchange between different local governments. We have over 1,000 members worldwide in 86 different countries, and these members are supported by about 250 ICLEI staff based in 18 offices, and in this image you can see the main offices. But so let's move to the motivations, and Gordian already referred to quite a few of these motivations. There are indeed many good reasons for local governments to consider and to set ambitious renewable energy targets, and these range from climate protection, as we've seen, a big concern, but also other issues such as energy security, keeping money in the local community by avoiding purchase and import of fossil fuels, create local jobs and stimulate the local economy. There are indeed a lot of drivers to consider in this process. Just for the interest of time, I'm going to move to the next slide, but we'll be happy to return to this if you'd like to. So this is, in the next few slides, this is what I'm going to show to you. A little bit of a methodology or process guidance which we've developed at ICLEI based on a project called Local Renewables. And this has started quite a few years back already, and it was used and implemented in both developing and developed countries. Of course, each city has to make its own path when going towards renewable energies, but here, through this previous experience, we were able to distill, let's say, some of the important steps that can go into such a pathway. So on the left-hand side, I am listing the local renewables step-by-step process guidance, let's say. And on the right-hand side, I'm listing examples from cities that have indeed implemented actions that in a way illustrate how these can materialize and what these mean in practice. So starting with this process, one of the most important elements is indeed to compile, to do an assessment of what is the city's current status regarding energy consumption and emissions as well, because this indeed enables the local government to then define a strategy to improve energy efficiency in a targeted way, in a very effective targeted way. And actually in the previous presentation, Gordian illustrated just this, how they started by identifying what are indeed the sectors that emit most greenhouse gas emissions and that are consuming more energy. So this is the start. Another very important step is also, of course, the identification of the local renewable energy potential. And so let me tell you a little bit some examples from Seoul in South Korea that precisely illustrate this. So Seoul began, oh, I apologize. Seoul actually began by making a political strategy by launching an initiative called One Less Nuclear Power Plant in 2012. And in 2014 they then released the Sustainable Energy Action Plan. But in the meantime they've already been exploring measures in both the energy efficiency side and the renewable energy. And for example, on energy efficiency, this includes combined heat and power generation, recovery of waste heat through the use of the district heating network, but other measures as well regarding renewable energy. For example, on solar photovoltaic, a package that includes not only the removal of institutional barriers regarding license and implementation of projects, but also the creation of a fund to encourage citizens to invest on PV, and also the distribution of solar kits to citizens to demonstrate the potential. This is also being accompanied by a comprehensive study seeking to identify all usable energy sources, and these include, for example, hydropower, but also biomass. So these were a few examples of the first two steps, which, let me say again, there is some logic to this, but this is not, it doesn't have to be strictly in this order, of course. So regarding the steps 3 and 4, I would like to highlight the need to involve stakeholders. They can have a very important role, for example, in data collection, mobilization, but also in sharing responsibility and taking ownership over measures and implementation. Regarding setting targets and renewable energy policies, of course, it's a path that needs to be developed, but of course, the ideal is to define strategies that cover the different sectors and ideally to reach the community scale. So, for example, here, the Stockholm in Sweden, for step number 3 regarding stakeholder engagement, and I'm just giving you an example. A workshop was conducted using an Energy Futures Scenarios tool to build a consensus-driven scenario, and this enabled to bring together the key stakeholders of the energy system in a holistic perspective. So it's an interesting process as well. In this particular case, they used the GRIP tool developed by Dr. Sebastian Carney, which has indeed been recognized as an example of excellence in this regard, in this field. Stockholm has indeed made a commitment to achieve 100% renewable energies at community scale by 2050, and indeed they are defining policies that cover the different sectors, namely electricity, heat, and transport. Moving to steps number 5 and 6, the establishment and operation of local renewable resource centers. This can be a good way to make information and even technical support available to the population in general, but also to specific professional groups that can be very relevant. And also the implementation of demonstration projects. And here, of course, the leadership of the local government in setting an example is very important. And let me give you here, for example.
Sorry, Anna?
Yes?
Anna, sorry. For some reason, your screens, your slides aren't progressing. Can you? We were still on the slide that says Seoul, Korea. Seoul, South Korea. Can you?
Oh, I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay.
Let me see. I'm not sure what might have happened. Can you see as I now move from one slide to the other?
We don't see it in the presentation mode. We only see it in the PowerPoint work screen.
But okay, so let me try. Do you see?
Try progressing now.
Okay, so this was for Stockholm, and
now
this
it's progressing. Now it's working.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm not quite sure what happened, but I'm glad then that it's now available. Sorry about that. So regarding Betim, the example of Betim, the municipality installed over 1,000 solar water heaters in low-income housing that was owned by the municipality. And indeed, a survey was conducted later on that proved that these households indeed had decreased their electricity consumption. I should say that these solar heaters were essentially used to replace electric heaters. And indeed, so it was noticed that both the electricity consumption decreased, and there was also an added benefit regarding the electricity bill, because many of these households became eligible to certain tax exemptions. And so demonstration projects, both in municipal property, municipal buildings, can indeed be a very good way to build trust on certain types of technologies and to really encourage the uptake of such technologies by the market. So here's a good example as well. Moving to steps number 7 and 8, of course, local governments have to operate within the national and regional policy frameworks and infrastructure. So it is indeed very important to take any opportunity that comes up to promote integration and cooperation across different levels of government. This will be crucial to facilitate the replication and scale up of local projects. And with this, I would like to give you the example of the local renewables project in India, where we began the project with 3 selected model cities, and this gave inspiration and guidance for the development of the Solar City program, which was launched by the government of India, and to which more than 50 cities joined. So this is indeed a very good example of how it's possible to have cooperation and coordination between bottom-up and top-down initiatives and bring them together to increase the impacts. So this, and also listed here, this is also a component of networking and cooperation, but I'll come back to this. Before, just to wrap up on this step-by-step guidance, of course, very important to implement and enjoy the competitive advantages of the measures that indeed enhance the use of renewable energies, and in particular local renewables, and also to evaluate the impacts of the measures and to report on them. This is very important, of course, not just in terms of project and program management, but also in terms of resource management, and it's very important in terms of transparency, credibility, and ensuring the continued support of your stakeholders. So with this, and I would like to finalize these examples with the city of Vecchio in Sweden, where indeed they have done tremendous progress regarding the replacement of fossil fuels in both electricity and district heating production through the use of forest biomass. And indeed, this is a process that has begun already in the 80s and that has progressed. That indeed shows progress. I apologize. Vecchio has set the target to achieve 100% renewable energies by 2030, and in 2012 their share of renewable energies in the city's energy mix was of about 58%. So indeed good to see that they are in a good track, and also let me say that Vecchio is one of the cities that is reporting in Carbon Climate Registry. This is an online platform for local climate data, which includes targets, actions, greenhouse gas emissions, inventories, information on the energy mix and so on. And it's available for free for all interested local governments. I would appreciate if you could confirm if my slide moved on now.
Yes, it looks,
Yes.
we're at the
So,
Vasco steps.
still at the vacuum. Okay, so now I'm trying to move. So I'm sorry about this. I was trying to move, and I think this happens when I minimize the GoToWebinar interface. I'm sorry about that. Are you seeing now the slide on 100% renewable energies, cities and regions network?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. So, very good. So going back to the issue of networking, indeed, I would like to tell you about this particular network in which ICLEI is actively engaged in establishing. It's a network that brings together the cities, towns, and regions that are driving the transition towards 100% renewable energy. And the purpose is indeed to facilitate their networking and exchange with other leading cities and with experts on a global scale to really establish a community of practice that helps to accelerate progress. So this network is part of the Global 100% Renewable Energy campaign. Jennifer already mentioned and introduced the campaign earlier on, and ICLEI is one of the partner organizations in it as a contact, a fulcral point for local governments. So we are indeed reaching out to our members, but not only to ICLEI members, also to other cities that indeed either have already established 100% renewable energies or they indeed have a strong political commitment in exploring such a pathway and in making such a commitment in a fairly short period of time. So if you are interested in this, please contact us. I will, in the last slide, I will present my contacts, and I strongly encourage you to come back. There is another topic that I would still like to address before finalizing. So throughout the presentation, I understand I was trying to cover a lot of information in a very short period of time, but in any case I've already mentioned some of the resources that are indeed available to support local governments in this path. I've mentioned the local renewables step-by-step guidance. I've mentioned the Carbon Climate Registry online platform. I've mentioned the GREEP tool. Another very important tool is the Solutions Gateway. This is an online platform which provides guidance for local governments on low emission development options for their communities. It is tailor-made for local governments, so it focuses on their usual roles and mandates. And it is free for all local governments, regardless of whether they are ICLEI members or not. Here is an opportunity for the renewable energy industries to connect and to help shape the guidance which is made available through this online platform, and which also then connects to other activities beyond the online platform. This is a list of the renewable energy related packages that we are currently mapping out for development. Those that are in green are those where we already have some contents online or where we are already doing work, and the ones in black are the ones where we still have to start. So you see that there's still a lot to do, and we look forward to contacts with organizations from the renewable energies industry sectors. There are many ways in which we can engage you. For example, to the drafting and peer review of contents, meaning solutions and solution packages, but also in sharing case studies, for example, in nominating experts. So there are indeed several ways to cooperate, and if indeed you are interested in this, let me actually bring up this last slide so that you can see my contacts, and I'll be happy to share more information about this, both about the Solutions Gateway and the different ways in which we envision the engagement of entities, both NGOs and entities from the private sector. And we do tailor the approach accordingly. So thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That was a very thorough and good overview presentation of what ICLEI is doing. There's been a few questions that have come in. First of all, some of your slides, we couldn't see all of them, so I just want to let everyone know that all the slides, the presentations are on our website, and Joanna has been putting up the link to where you can find them. So if some of the text couldn't be read, you can, our audience members can go back in to the ISES website, ises.org, and find the presentations as PDF files there. So there, like I said, there was quite a number of questions that came up. Let's see if we can maybe just address one or two of them. One of them was about the asking if there's any community-owned projects as part of the plan for the SEAP 2014. I guess that's referring to the Korean one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, actually, I specifically mentioned, for example, that Seoul developed a package on solar photovoltaic. One of the measures was indeed to create a fund that supports citizens in the investment of on solar photovoltaic. So it creates a facilitated framework, let's say, so that indeed citizens can own part of the project. I'm not fully familiar with the details, but if you'd like, I can try to learn more and share with you later on by email. But indeed, there is, at least for solar photovoltaic, I am aware of this particular fund, which indeed enables and facilitates community ownership.
Yeah, and just a few questions that came up to my mind as we were listening to your talk, and I wanted to ask about the importance of pilot projects on public buildings. Are those a driving force as well, and also the role of the community authority? Are those, how important do you see pilot projects, especially on public buildings, for example?
Mm-hmm. I see them, we see them, in ICLEI, we see them as very important indeed. If the local government acts on its own facilities, it is then demonstrating that it really believes in the type of technologies that it's implemented, technologies and processes. So if the local government, for example, implements solar thermal in its facilities, solar water heaters, let's say, in its facilities, then it's much easier to engage stakeholders and to build consensus, for example, to the approval of a solar ordinance that requires the use of solar thermal in private buildings. So we indeed see it as very relevant.
Okay, thank you, Anna. We'll move on now. We've got, like I said, a few other questions that came in for you during your talk, and we'll send those on to you and see how many we can address towards the end. So now I'd like to introduce our final speaker today, Yannick Régnier, who's joining us from France, from the organization CLEIR, C-L-E-R. It's a network for the energy transition. He's been working with them for the last 8 years, and before that he was at Total, a French company in oil and gas. He has coordinated several European projects, an IEE project, for example, the Renewable Energy Champions League, as well as the 100% RES communities, which is done in cooperation with DENet. Yannick is been a partner in the social science research project called Climate Corrid, which is funded by the National Energy Agency on the emergence of local energy dynamics and policies, and still cooperates with an international group of researchers. So we're very glad to have Yannick here to represent Claire and to talk to us about the French and the situation, what his organization is doing. So Yannick, I turn over to you.
Thanks. Thanks, Jennifer, and good morning, good afternoon, good night to everyone. You'll be pleased to hear a French accent, which is always a kind of a weird accent in English, but I've always been told that it was a bit of the charming part of French people. So. Also related to the thing that I'm French is that probably I will have a French focus for several issues, and maybe some approaches will look quite strange. I mean, in the way they are put at the forefront. But I guess that's also interesting for at least some of you. I will start just with the subtitle which is given to this presentation. I will just come back on what we call, I say we because that's a group of partners who started this. That's 100% RES as renewable energy sources communities. And the subtitle is quite important, and I will come back in the details. Which is integrate energy in a political, strategic and systemic commitment in favor of regional development. And the question of regional development has been tackled already by Gordian and Anna. And this is really the heart of what we are doing in France related to energy. So that's just a quick view on the main issues. I mean, for this century, to my opinion, not only mine. And it's quite important, I think, to differentiate the two issues. The first one on the left is on the right, sorry, is What a World. That's related to climate change. That's quite an old movie. With superheroes. Kevin Costner is maybe not yet so young today, but the idea is that that was interesting as the movies have tackled these big issues in a kind of dramatic way. But it's always simple to talk about problems like this. I mean, the problem for Long Island was real. I mean, as soon as the water will be higher, some islands or countries which are close to water will have main issues, and not only close to water, because there are plenty of other issues in other countries. And the other one is maybe more important for us in our approaches. This is related to, I don't know if you remember this movie Mad Max, but that was basically about fuel, not depletion, but the fact that no more fuel was available to people, and people were fighting, I mean, kind of civil wars to get fuel, to fuel the cars especially, and continue moving and surviving, actually. And I think that this problem, which can be partly disconnected to climate change, is a resource problem. As soon as we will get resource problem, we'll get more than probably financial problem, and I guess then economic problems. Fortunately for the nuclear industry, I've not found any fun movie with big superheroes to talk about the nuclear specific technological problems and potential accidents. But of course, this is one of the other issues that we can consider at this stage. So the only written information that I will get in my presentation is this one. This is about the definition of what we call a 100% renewable energy community, or we could say region also. It's a community which is willing, that's related to the political will, and able, which is related to physics, I will come back on this, to cover its energy demand entirely and even more by renewable energy sources. And of course, this is with respect to electricity, heating, and mobility. We could also add industry, but as the big industry is somehow in a different, world, we could say, small regions may not have the end on industry. That's why it's not specifically focused there. Of course, we address their energy saving and efficiency. Saving could be translated somehow by sufficiency. This is a term that is maybe not so known. Basically, this is to mean I have enough, and this is more the social way of saving energy, and efficiency would be the technological way somehow. And all of it is considered in a holistic and sustainable way. Also, I will have a graphic about this. And as I said before, the community fosters a regional development approach, meaning that they are really working and willing to maximizing the regional value creation. So that's not only about getting renewable energy, this is getting renewable energy in a particular way. Just a word on the question of urban and rural region. With the question, are they all the same? I've taken these images from a kind of landscape design or whatever document that was on landscape and energy transition landscape, basically. Of course, this kind of reality does not exist today. There are really differences between the urban places and the rural places. And I like to say, just to get a clear image, and I think that that's really related to the physics, that more than probably the cities, the bigger cities, the more dense cities will probably never be 100% renewable energy by themselves, meaning on their own resources. Not more than they are usually self-sufficient with food and agriculture, which are also natural resources. So the question is also about the relationship that we have to build between urban and rural regions, also on the issue of energy. But for this time, I mean, cities have many advantages compared to rural places, but this time the rural regions have the advantages, which are the natural resources that they can develop and then create value out of it. To understand this slide, just a kind of a short introduction. You have to understand that that's what I was talking about, the French perspective. France is a socialist country, as the American people could be used to say. I'm not only talking about the president, François Hollande at the time, which is from the Socialist Party, but France is a culturally, I would say, socialist. And it's even socialist when Nicolas Sarkozy is the head of state. Meaning that there is always, between elected persons, a real strong concern about the question of public services. And that's why what we always, push, and what the communities and the local authorities are telling to us, that they are really willing to be responsible for the general interest and on the matter of energy to assume public service on energy. And this is especially related to a potential social problem that you could get related to energy. And typically this is for some families, the poorest families, the impossibility to pay the bills, to heat the house, especially, that can lead to a health problem and not only a social problem at the end. So this is already today a situation where we have more and more of this, there are these families who are not able to pay the bills. But if you come back to the Mad Max picture and poster, I think that will be worse in the future, meaning that the fuel prices coming from oil and gas and so will more than probably rise, meaning that the people that are not poor today, they are not resilient. They are not resilient. They could get problem in the future. So this is both a current situation and a trend in the future that we have to come back on this. So working on energy from the energy saving point of view, this is working towards resilience, which is a term which is used in the transition initiatives, transition town movement also a lot. Then that was the problem. On this side, we get mainly a focus on the opportunities related to energy, and especially in the rural places. So this image might be quite enigmatic, but basically what we want to say is that as soon as you get natural resources, sun, wind, wood, water, and whatever, you could get energy resources, and then you can create value out of your resources. Just to give a quick example, with 4 wind turbines, today you can get up to €2 million revenues every year. So of course you have to pay the investment and so on, but this is large amount of money, and you have to remember this all the time. And local authorities are quite surprised, I mean, compared to their own means, to see what they can do as far as they can expect money from energy. But the situation, that's what I was saying just before, is that of course we can create value, but who gets the value? And that's the question of who develops project. Who is the owner of the project? Is the community involved in the project? And this is this is a key issue on which we are working. And I'm used to present also this diagram from Germany showing that half of the renewable energy projects to produce electricity, mainly PV and wind, are owned by community, people, farmers, and not by the big industries and the financial sector. So that's, of course, a very important point. This slide relates to the holistic and systemic thing I was talking at the start. We have really to consider that energy is at the heart of sustainability, and that makes a difference of talking about energy and not only about climate. Climate is an international issue that you can deal at the international level, for which you might have local consequences. But energy is really a universal issue, meaning that at every scale where you are concerned, and there are specific regional issues related to energy. So that's why to be a little bit provocative, I always say, instead of think global, act local. Now when I see people in rural places which are especially pragmatic, I always say think local, act local in the field of energy. And the idea is really to make people understand what are the benefits of working of energy for them, and not only for the planet and the people at the other side of the world. But this is only a kind of way of presenting things, and that's a way to motivate people. Just a slide with a concrete example now, concrete images. All these images are from a small region in France. There are 7,000 people there only, and that's quite small. And if you take the images from the small pig to the rapeseed and then the wood, and so this is all the resources I was talking about. And in this region, they have decided to develop projects based on all the resources. And just to make it quick, and so basically the structure of this is you get resources. As soon as you don't get actors to transform them into projects, you get no money, and as soon as you do, you could get money. And the people, that's quite important just to have a word about them. The first one on the top, Dominique Rocabo, is a farmer, is growing pig, and he was the founder of this collective biogas unit that is on the right, which is a very big unit, and they gathered with 35 farmers to do this together, and then they got associated to a company and to some public financial institution in France. So that's a collective project. Just below there is another farmer, which is also the president of the region today, and they had a project to fuel tractors with rapeseed oil. But it's not only to produce fuel, because they use the solid part of rapeseed oil after it's crushed to feed the cattle. So there is also thinking about not using things that could come from Brazil or whatever, as far as we can produce them in France. There are wood eating systems, plant and networks in most of the villages. There are 7 villages. And for wind, 140 citizens gather to develop the park, and they have 30% of the windmill today that has been developed in the country. And the 70 other percent, this is a cooperative society which has participated in the development of the project. This is just to show how a region, with the people in the region, can develop projects for their own need. And basically, the region was working towards economic development, not towards environmental issue or whatever. This is a lost region. They have no economic level today, but food industry, which is maybe in a crisis today in France. So this is really a way for them to get out of the hole, I would say, in this rural region. I will not take much time on this, but as I was saying, and Jennifer was saying, I was coordinating a European project involving 10 countries to kind of set up a common definition of what we call a 100% community or region. And based on the German approach and the first analysis, we identified 4 important levels to get there. More than probably Gordian talk about a few of them. The first one is about the objective. You get to get the political will to reach it. That's very important. And we have a kind of label, we could say, and you could only get this label as far as there is a political will to be 100% renewable. Then you have to get a good strategic approach, and this is what we call Sustainable Energy Action Plan at European level in the framework of the Covenant of Mayors, for example. This is what the German can call the energy concept, and this is what in France we usually call the Climate and Energy Action Plan. But basically this is good project management on energy, to make it very simple, and Anna was clear about the steps that are useful for this. Then the level of integration, is the way you consider energy not only as something to be done for climate, for example, on the environment, but also for the economic issues, the social issues, the democratic issues. And that's why I was presenting before. If you don't connect energy with all these key issues like economic and social one, many elected persons will not feel really concerned about this. But as soon as you do, then you get a really strong level to, as messages to push them to action. And the last one is just as part of the label to see how much renewable is a region which has committed to become 100% renewable. You can start from 0, but you have to progress in time. And just shortly, this is a map with a sample, I would say, of this 100 renewable energy region that is available on the map of our website. And fortunately, quite soon, I have a colleague working on this for France. That will also be available on the map of Go 100% Renewable Energy campaign that Anna was talking about, because ICLEI is part. And we also in France with Claire and at European level, we are a part of this campaign. Thanks for your attention, and I can take any question.
Thank you, Yannick, for your presentation. Jennifer, can you unmute your microphone, please? Thank you.
Yeah, excuse me, sorry about that. So yeah, thanks, Joanna. Thank you, Yannick. Your presentation gave us an excellent overview of what you're doing there in France, and it's great to have the French perspective as well, because it is an important driver, especially at the European level. I wanted to ask, because of the way, so the unique French situation, it's very top-down. I know that there's been some pilot projects in France that, for example, in the Bordeaux region or La Réunion. What do you think that some of the main driving forces are in the communities that you work with directly?
I was not completely sure to understand your question, but that reminds me that I wanted just to give one word about what we have done with ICLEI at European level and the consequences today for the French state globally. As we promoted many local actions which were concrete, with concrete results, with real people, we had really a very good media coverage. I said we, I mean the local authorities and the region had a very good media coverage. And they made popular what we call in France not 100% rest community, but a positive energy territory. That was a kind of expression that we created 5 years ago. And positive energy, I mean, was something so good for communication that eventually the French Minister Ségolène Royal, French Minister for the Energy and Environment, used it for a national program, today a national policy on energy. And that's a very good thing because that brought a very big movement towards the importance of the regional approach and all this economic and social approach that should be given to energy at local level. So sorry, that was my point. If your question was about one other, please.
Yeah, that's fine. One of the other points that you brought up at the beginning was not just being the political will, but being able to implement these strategies. How important are feasibility studies that are conducted, and how do you go about those? And
yeah, there is something, but I had no really time to decide on this. But we started our whole action based on the observation that rural local authorities were not, tackled by the public authorities in France or the energy saving agencies and so. So we started to work with the rural people, and we are talking about 100% renewable all the time. But that's very clear that the city of Paris and the big metropolitan area in France will never be 100% renewable by themselves. But as soon as I've said this is just to say that, for example, the 320 objectives that the European Commission was pushing for 2020, it's also strange to apply this to every kind of region because some can do more and some will have difficulties to do 2020. And so, of course, feasibility studies should be done. Should not take too much time, but I would say that every kind of local authorities, urban or rural, should do the best it can. But probably they will not reach the same coverage of as part of renewable energy. But that's not a problem. Then there are markets, and through the markets, the urban areas will buy energy from the rural areas.
Okay, thank you, Yannick. So I think we'll move on to some of the other questions that came in during the 3 presentations. So if the other speakers can unmute themselves, if I have a question for you, then you can answer. I'd like to start with a few questions that came up about grid stability, local grid stability, and what are some of the issues that are being addressed in regard to how making sure that there's stability in the local grid with such a high penetration of renewables. Gordian, I'd like to ask you if you can approach that question first.
Yes, that is a very important question. First, to be clear, what we are trying to achieve here in East Hampton, at least for now, is to generate the annual amount of electricity that we consume, measured in kilowatt hours, from renewable energy sources. So that doesn't mean that at every second of the year all of the energy capacity will be provided from renewables. It just means that over the course of 1 year, the amount of kilowatt hours consumed equals the amount of kilowatt hours generated from renewables. Now, that being said, once we get higher rates of grid penetration with renewables, it becomes very important to make sure that the grid, the transmission and distribution system and everything else can handle that. We are a long way from that, but of course every renewable energy project, larger scale renewable project, has to undergo interconnection studies and has to be approved by the grid operator to ensure that grid stability and other important factors are being considered. So at the moment, this is not a problem for us because we have a very low penetration, renewable energy penetration rate. But as that grows, that will become a more and more important issue that can be dealt with.
Okay, Yannick, you wanted to address this as well?
Yes, just a word to say, like Gordian, that it's not an issue today in France because the renewable energy and especially electricity is not so developed that it can be a problem. And it's not neither the case in a regional level. There are not enough penetration. Just what I wanted to say is that 100% renewable energy, I mean, in a continental area, we don't given as an objective to get this at every time, as Gordian was saying, but that's an annual average. Of course, the region will still be in the macrogrid, the European macrogrid, and there can be some macro and there can be some microgrid also, but it's not about being an island for every region. It's just about to get a technical, I mean, optimum that would be better than this. And the second thing, it's so good to develop some biomass sources, and let's say especially biogas. And I think that the importance of conversion between energy vector, meaning electricity, gas, maybe hydrogen, is also a part of the solution at midterm, I would say. Converting electricity to gas is probably a very good way of doing it in the midterm.
Okay, what about storage? That's a big topic right now, especially with new technologies being coming onto the market. For example, Tesla with its solar home storage system. How can storage needs be met, and how are the local projects that you're working with dealing with storage and using other technologies?
Well, this is Gordian, I can say something quickly about that. First, I'd like to say that a well-designed renewable energy grid and sustainable energy grid, while storage plays a role there, there are many other ways to ensure that the amount of storage, which if it's battery storage, it's still relatively expensive. The amount of storage can be minimized. So first of all, we have technologies such as shifting demand from one time of the day to another part of the day. We have load control where we can lower demand during certain times. And of course, a system that has a diversity of different types of renewable energy sources, such as solar and wind, and in different locations with different amounts of energy available at different times, can also mitigate or reduce the amount of energy storage needed. But ultimately, we know we will need some energy storage, and that will play an important role.
Anna or Yannick, is this something you can address as well?
Yes, maybe Yannick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, about storage, I think that we should always remember that typically the battery systems should be maybe the last solution to try to think about. The first one would be the possibility to have a flexible production, which is not so easy with renewable energy electricity, to have a flexible demand. This is the question of smart grid appliances and so on. Then to get possibly storage through water. We have quite a lot in France, but also through the conversion of vectors, as I was saying. Probably the conversion from electricity to hydrogen or gas is as good or better solution than battery. But mainly what I can foresee for the future is as the PV systems and the battery systems are getting cheaper and cheaper, individual decisions of people could change the system by itself, especially in places where there are a lot of sun and it's becoming really close to grid parity. And the main problem that I see today is that in France, for example, that there is no regulation system adaptation to plan, I mean, this technological evolution. So there will be storage, different kind of storage, but today it's not sure that the best technical way of doing things and economical way is planned by anybody, unfortunately.
Hello, this is Anna. I can also jump in on this topic regarding storage, and you mentioned in particular the home systems at the beginning of your question, Jennifer. In that particular regard, from what I hear, there is still a very long way to go because indeed I hear that the batteries that are currently available, the useful energy that they can return throughout their useful life is still fairly low in comparison with the energy that the battery production consumes itself. So from what I hear, there is indeed a long way to go at a wider scale, considering the energy systems such as electricity and heating. Yannick and Gordian mentioned several solutions already, like hydro, like power to gas. I would add power to liquid as well, particularly also for the transport sector, and also the relation or integration with the district energy systems. But definitely I would say that there's still a lot of work to be done, and depending on the local circumstances, it would be good, of course, to explore the possibilities that are at hand and to build on successes. This would be my general comment.
Okay, thank you. Also, one of our participants brought up the question of electrical vehicles and how they can be used and integrated into community plans. Does anybody have any experience with that, or any insights on the use of electrical vehicles?
Maybe this is Yannick. Maybe just a word from the rural perspective I was taken during my presentation. I think the electric vehicles are probably a very good part of the solution in not very dense urban areas, because there are other solutions than vehicles, but in urban areas or close to. But in rural areas, still today, the electric vehicles are not probably really the best technical solution, and we are really working a lot also on the issue of vehicles simply powered with gas, liquefied gas coming from biogas. And typically the places I was talking about, the money with the people, this is one of the things they would start to work about, because the electric vehicles are not always so suitable to rural places due to the distances.
Well, I can, this is Gordian, I can say that electric vehicles are, just like many other very important technologies and approaches, an integral part to the solution here. And I think it's important to emphasize that we need to look at the entire picture, at the entire energy paradigm, and not just electricity. We need to look at transportation and mobility and heating and a lot of other sectors in order to make this transition happen and to make it happen in the most beneficial way. So I think electric vehicles will play a role. We don't know exactly how large of a role, but the bigger point I see here is that we should not work in isolated silos, as we say often. We need to work holistically, we need to work with each other, and we need to work across all sectors.
Especially because electric or gas mobility will be related to infrastructures that are not really existing today. The grid is maybe not fitted for a very big implementation of electric mobility today.
Okay, thanks both for those points. I have one more final question to put to the round of speakers, and that's about the policies. What are the kind of policies that are being implemented to drive this 100% renewable energy transition? For example, the energy transformation law in France or a feed-in tariff. This is for all three of the presenters. Gordian, we can start with you.
Well, great question. I mean, there are so many laws and regulations now that are helping drive us in this direction. So, for example, in our region here in New York and at the northeast of the United States, we have what is called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. It is a cap and trade scheme that sets certain limits for the owners of power plants to emit carbon dioxide, and then if they go over that limit, they have to buy allowances at an auction and spend millions and millions of dollars on that. And of course, that provides an incentive to reduce these emissions. We also take the revenue from these auctions and reinvest that into renewable energy projects. We have carbon emission reduction goals in the state of New York, as you've seen, and now nationally to some degree, and those help drive this transition.
Anna?
Yes, of course, we need to consider when talking about this at what level of government we're talking about, and of course it is relevant, and it makes perfect sense if the policies at the different levels come together and push for the same direction. So you've mentioned already, and some measures have been mentioned throughout the different presentations, like for example the 100% renewable energy targets at local level can be important in setting indeed a commitment and in aligning a strategy and the implementation of programs and projects to support this, and this can then come to life through regulations, through specific funds that are also created to support. So there's definitely there are several possibilities that can come to realize in the different locations. I would still like to go back just for one quick comment to say that I have to support what Gordian said earlier regarding the need to look at this problem in an integrated way and in a holistic way, and indeed many different solutions can take part and many different strategies can take part of the pathway that the different cities and regions define for themselves to reach 100% renewables.
Okay, and Yannick?
Yes, maybe just a word about the energy transition law that was voted a few weeks ago. It's not a revolution, despite what the minister can say, but it gives good evolutions in the field of energy. Especially, there are very good objectives for the next decades, and so it gives theoretically a good pathway to the future. This is to lower consumption, have a higher rate of renewable energy. Still, we get some nuclear energy indeed, but this is not the main problem for us at this stage. I mean, anyway, the pathway is good. There are good things for the promotion of community power, for the renovation of houses, small things altogether, but that's always good. But the main thing I would say is that the communication that is made by the Minister Ségolène Royal about this, which is quite a strong character in France, I mean in the political world, is very positive because she's talking about the regional approach all the time, about what people can do, local actors can do, companies can do. And in a country where, I mean, centralism is so strong, especially in the field of energy with groups like EDF, Total, GDF and so, this is already something very, very useful. But the only thing that was made specifically for the region was to give them €500,000 to finance any kind of project going in the field of renewable energy and energy saving. This is not a strategic, I would say, program, but that's a good program to move people, and moving local actors and regions is really a motto in France, and that's already a good thing.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, everyone. This has been a very informative session. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I'm sure we could continue the discussion for another hour and a half, but unfortunately we don't have the time for that today, and everyone has other things to do, I'm sure. So I just want to thank you all three again for your excellent presentations and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. And I want to wish you, all three of you, the best in your work, and continue to do a great job in advancing the 100% renewable energy transformation in your communities and in your projects. And we look forward to hopefully hearing more from you at a future webinar or an event, and our audience will be able to access your presentations and the recording, as we had said, throughout. And remember, if you'd like to become a member, for those of you in our audience and you're not yet, you can do so just by visiting our website, join.ises.org, and have access to this webinar any time you'd like. I also want to bring just a short bit of attention to our next webinar, which will take place at the end of September on the 30th. We're going to be addressing again the topic of 100% renewable energy, looking at more personal, local actions, as well as addressing how to actually achieve big solar, and looking at this emerging trend again. So we welcome you to join us for that, and we'll send you an information email about that webinar and how to sign up. And yeah, as we can see, there are a lot of lessons learned on this topic, and great work going on throughout, and there's not just the technical issues to address, the political will, as Yannick said, but also the technical, and it'll surely develop, and it will be one of the leading and important topics as different actors and different stakeholders engaged in this process. So again, I want to thank everyone. Thank you to our audience. I'm sorry we ran out of time. Gordian, Anna, and Yannick again, and Joanna for helping and getting everybody set up. And yeah, that's the final. Joanna, if you have anything else to add.
Just
thanks for the organization.
Thank you, Yannick.
Thank you all.
Have a good day.
Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye everyone. Thanks. And don't forget the survey, which will be launched here in a few minutes as well.